Hello everyone, and thank you for being here. Today and yesterday, we participated in the Association of Southeast Asian Nations Summit with our partners here in Cambodia. We announced the great news that ASEAN will elevate our relationship to a strategic partnership. This is an endorsement of Canada's engagement in the region and a step forward towards much closer relations between our countries and our peoples moving forward. Expanding our partnerships and economic ties with countries here is critical for Canada. Earlier this week, Minister Joly announced our upcoming Indo-Pacific strategy. This will be a major shift to strengthen our engagement in the region in the long term. ASEAN is central to the Indo-Pacific region where we are right now. It's a growing hub for trade and investment that fosters open markets and creates good, meaningful jobs now and into the future as the Canadian economy grows. The Indo-Pacific is a priority for Canadians. Ensemble, les 10 pays membres de l'Association des Nations de l'Asie du Sud-Est représentent la 5e plus grande économie au monde et la 3e plus grande population. C'est une région qui a énormément de potentiel. Si on veut créer des bons emplois pour la classe moyenne et aider nos entreprises canadiennes à prospérer, on doit être encore plus présent ici. Il faut développer de nouveaux marchés. Il faut être compétitif. C'est comme ça qu'on va maintenir la position du Canada comme un vrai joueur mondial. Voilà pourquoi on est ici aujourd'hui, qu'on va être au G20 en Indonésie demain et qu'on va participer au sommet de l'APEC en Thaïlande. Yesterday, I shared that we'll be investing in a fund to help advance the negotiation of a free trade agreement with ASEAN. We'll also invest in a new Canadian trade gateway in Southeast Asia, a trade gateway that will help Canadian businesses expand into Indo-Pacific markets, linking them to incubators, entrepreneurs, and accelerators. These investments will mean more jobs for Canadians and more growth for ASEAN economies. While we invest to create more jobs and more opportunities for people, we're also working to build a more resilient future. Around the world, over the past years, we've been seeing flooding, hurricanes, and wildfires caused by climate change. The consequences of climate change are real for our communities and for our economies. Many countries in Southeast Asia, especially coastal ones with islands, just like Canada, are even more vulnerable to climate change. Over the next 5 years, we'll invest here in the Indo-Pacific region to increase international assistance to partner countries, including support for sustainable and climate-resilient infrastructure. We're also stepping up our work to protect the environment. Canada has world-class expertise in oceans management, and we can use this expertise to help. We're committed to keep the ocean healthy in the Indo-Pacific region, and we'll invest to create a new Shared Oceans Fund. This will include support for measures against illegal, unreported, and unregulated fishing. Keeping our oceans healthy is important for the environment, and it's also important for jobs, trade, and security. Bâtir un avenir durable, c'est aussi de s'assurer que tout le monde ait une chance égale de réussir. Plus tôt aujourd'hui, j'ai participé à un événement pour la paix et la sécurité des femmes et j'en ai profité pour annoncer qu'on va mettre sur pied un plan d'action en partenariat avec l'Association des Nations de l'Asie du Sud-Est. J'ai aussi annoncé un investissement pour aider des organisations canadiennes à promouvoir l'égalité des sexes dans la région Indo-Pacifique et encourager la réussite des femmes et des filles. Bien sûr, cette semaine, je vais continuer de dénoncer la guerre illégale et brutale de la Russie en Ukraine. C'est une guerre qui fait des ravages horribles et qui a des répercussions partout dans le monde. Poutine a créé une crise énergétique, de l'insécurité alimentaire et de l'inflation à travers le monde. Plus que jamais, c'est le moment de collaborer pour faire face à ces défis. Canada is home to some of the largest diasporas of Southeast Asians in the world. To continue strengthening ties between our peoples, we'll expand the successful Canada-ASEAN Scholarships and Exchanges program. Southeast Asian students enrich our universities and communities, and we want to provide them with even more opportunities to study in Canada. We're here this week to make Canada more competitive and to show the world what we have to offer. We're deepening and strengthening our engagement in the region for the long term, and we're focused on creating jobs and opportunities for Canadian businesses. I look forward to continuing this work at the G20 in Indonesia, at APEC in Thailand, and over the months and years to come. Merci beaucoup tout le monde. En vos questions.
Thank you, Prime Minister. And also the Canadian reporters. One question, one follow-up.
Hi, Mr. Trudeau. Mackenzie Gray with Global. We've reported that CSIS gave you a briefing that in 2019 China interfered in the Canadian election. At the G20, you're going to be sitting beside Xi Jinping. Are you going to raise this issue with him?
Let me first highlight something that Canadians can be reassured by. We created a special independent commission made up of top officials and security experts to ensure that our elections continue to be free and fair in Canada. And in both the 2019 and 2021 elections, they reported that our elections unfolded with integrity. So Canadians, yes, why we need to be mindful about the real threats of foreign interference that exist at home and around the world. They can also be reassured that our institutions are strong, that our democracy is strong, and that we have measures in place to ensure that people know about it if anything does happen. But of course, we're always going to engage with leaders in ways that highlight concerns of Canadians, that stand up for our values and underscore preoccupations that Canadians have about things going on in the world. That's one of the reasons why these summits are so important, to bring people together. And we're going to continue to make sure that Canadians' preoccupations, but also Canadians' opportunities are highlighted in the world. Je veux mettre quelque chose au clair tout d'abord. On est bien sûr toujours préoccupé d'assurer que nos élections soient rigoureuses et faites comme il faut. C'est pour ça qu'on a créé un comité de hauts fonctionnaires et experts en sécurité pour s'assurer que le déroulement de nos élections se passe avec intégrité. Et dans leur rapport sur les élections de 2019 et 2021, ils ont confirmé que notre processus électoral a demeuré intègre. Je pense que les Canadiens sont très conscients qu'il y a des acteurs dans le monde qui veulent déstabiliser différentes démocraties, mais ils peuvent aussi savoir qu'au Canada, on a la résilience et on a une force d'institutions et de démocratie qui continue d'être robuste et intègre. Mais bien sûr, par rapport aux conversations qu'on va avoir avec différents chefs d'État pendant ces voyages, on va toujours souligner et les préoccupations des Canadiens et soutenir nos valeurs et amener les opportunités que nous avons pour créer plus de prospérité pour les Canadiens et pour nos partenaires à travers le monde.
So you're saying you're willing to have conversations with other leaders, but I just want to come back to the question and drill down on Xi Jinping. Are you going to raise this specific issue with him?
As always, I will raise issues of human rights, issues of matters that preoccupy with Canadians with any and all leaders that I engage.
En français, s'il vous plaît.
Okay. Comme toujours, je vais souligner la question des droits humains, des principes de défense de nos institutions avec tous les leaders avec qui j'ai des conversations.
Hi, Annie Bergeron-Oliver with CTV National News. You have previously said that it would be unproductive and extraordinarily difficult to have Putin currently at the table. Putin is not going to be at the G20, but Lavrov is. Do you believe that Russia should even have a position at the table anymore at the G20?
I think because the biggest question that we are facing in the world right now as a global economy is in part the instability that flows from Russia's illegal invasion of Ukraine, the energy crisis that has flowed from it, the inflation crisis that has flowed from it, the food crisis that has flowed from Russia's illegal actions. It's important as a G20 we work together to deal with threats to the global economy. We know that Russia has continued to spread misinformation and disinformation on their role in global instability, and the conversations we'll have around the G20 will be very, very clear to all our partners that Russia is responsible for making an already challenging world so much more challenging for millions, if not billions, of citizens who are suffering, not just those directly impacted by its illegal war in Ukraine, but those who are disrupted by the challenges of the global economy that it has caused.
En français, s'il vous plaît.
C'est très clair qu'au G20, quand on parle de défis pour l'économie mondiale, on va certainement se pencher sur un des plus gros défis de l'économie mondiale. C'est l'instabilité causée par l'invasion illégale de la Russie en Ukraine. Que ce soit la crise alimentaire, que ce soit la crise énergétique, l'inflation mondiale, tout a été aggravé par cette décision injustifiable de Vladimir Poutine d'envahir un pays voisin. Et donc, les conversations que nous allons avoir en tant que leader du G20 vont souligner à quel point la Russie doit être tenue responsable et comment nous allons devoir renforcer les règles et les principes de droit et de justice qui doivent soutenir notre système international.
Today, you took an emotional tour of Cambodia's Genocide Museum. Tomorrow, you're going to be at the G20 with China. The Canadian Parliament has already called China's treatment of the Uyghurs a genocide, so why haven't you?
As I've seen when I visited the Shoah Memorial, the Holocaust Memorial in Israel, as I've seen as I visited the Holocaust Memorial, the Genocide Memorial in Rwanda, as I saw today visiting and seeing the history of the genocide that happened here in Cambodia, the word genocide, acts of genocide, are things to be taken incredibly seriously as a world. And we have objective, historical, expert processes to put in place those words and those designations. We continue to call out vicious human rights abuses around the world, including against the Uyghurs in Xinjiang by the Chinese government. But designations of genocide need to be made by proper international authorities.
Je vais vous entendre en français là-dessus, s'il vous plaît.
On peut voir à travers le monde les résultats de génocide, que ce soit en visitant des mémoriaux à l'Holocauste, que ce soit quand j'ai visité le musée du génocide rwandais, que ce soit aujourd'hui où j'ai vu les atrocités perpétrées dans le génocide ici au Cambodge. C'est un mot, une désignation lourde de valeur et d'importance dans le monde. Et ça doit être par des processus fiables et indépendants qu'on utilise ces mots-là pour ne pas risquer de ternir le poids des événements de génocide reconnus à travers le monde. Mais nous avons toujours reconnu les actes de violence et les attaques aux droits profonds et fondamentaux des gens qui se passent en Xinjiang contre les Ouïghours, perpétrés par le gouvernement chinois. Nous allons continuer d'appeler pour plus de transparence, plus d'ouverture et plus de responsabilité du gouvernement chinois pour ces actes horribles.
Bonjour, M. Trudeau, Louis Blouin de Radio-Canada. Si vous en avez l'occasion pendant le G20, est-ce que vous allez vous adresser directement, interpeller personnellement Sergueï Lavrov?
Tout d'abord, Vladimir Poutine et le gouvernement et l'administration russe savent tous très bien la position du Canada, que leur guerre illégale en Ukraine est non seulement dévastateur pour les gens en Ukraine, mais déstabilise l'économie mondiale. C'est une erreur monumentale qu'ils ont faite pour laquelle ils vont être tenus responsables. Moi, ma priorité au G20, ça va être de souligner à quel point ça devient de plus en plus insoutenable pour les autres pays dans le monde de continuer à appuyer ou même juste à ne pas condamner la Russie pour ses actes horrifiques et déstabilisatrices pour les gens à travers le monde. Nous nous rassemblons au G20 pour, justement, nous existons en tant que G20, les grandes économies du monde, pour pouvoir s'adresser ensemble aux grands enjeux dans l'économie mondiale. Il y a très peu de grands enjeux qui ont autant d'importance ces jours-ci que cette erreur monumentale que Poutine a faite en envahissant l'Ukraine, en déstabilisant l'économie mondiale.
In English, please.
Russian officials and leaders, including Vladimir Putin, know full well what Canada's position is on their illegal and unjustifiable war in Ukraine. It was a monumental mistake. It was a violation of the principles of the UN, the principles of sovereignty and territorial integrity that all countries around the world hold dear to. And the work of the G20 is for the largest economies in the world to come together to address the biggest economic challenges the world is facing. And in this particular G20, Russia is directly and uniquely responsible for a large part of the challenges the world is facing right now, whether it's the global inflation crisis, the global food crisis, the global energy crisis, all because Vladimir Putin made a terrible choice and invaded a peaceful neighboring nation.
Ma question, M. Trudeau, c'est de savoir, est-ce que vous jugez ça utile, vous, personnellement, d'interpeller directement Sergueï Lavrov pendant ce sommet-là?
Moi, je vais passer mon temps à parler aux différents chefs. Si Lavrov est autour de la table, il va certainement m'entendre condamner directement les actions de la Russie et les conséquences de la Russie. En général, je n'ai pas particulièrement intérêt à parler directement à Lavrov. Je sais que Mélanie, ma ministre des Affaires étrangères, l'a fait à plusieurs reprises. Ils savent très bien mes positions et nos positions et la position des Canadiens sur la guerre illégale qu'ils sont en train de mener.
English, please.
I will always be very clear on how Canada stands with Ukraine and how Canada continues to pull together countries around the world to counter Russian misinformation and disinformation. I will be engaging directly with leaders at the G20. I know Melanie, our foreign minister, has had many direct conversations with Sergei Lavrov to highlight Canada's position. But my focus is going to be making sure that the world comes together to reinforce that Putin made a terrible, terrible choice when he decided to invade a peaceful neighboring country.
Hi, Prime Minister Rafi Boudjikanian, CBC News. You haven't yet clarified whether you'll be talking to China's president at all at the G20. Now, Joe Biden has the same tough stance as you on China, but he's meeting with President Xi Jinping. Why aren't you?
We, as always, the G20 is an opportunity to meet with a range of leaders and advance Canada's interests and positions, and that's exactly what we'll continue to do.
And just on matters back home, we're watching hospitalization rates skyrocket at the moment. Ontario is going to start urging people to publicly wear masks again. Are you considering bringing back federal public mask mandates?
The single best thing Canadians can do to prevent our hospitals from getting overwhelmed, to keep themselves and their loved ones safe during the coming winter months, is to make sure your vaccinations are up to date. Please, like I did just a few days ago, get your booster for COVID-19, get your flu shot at the same time, make sure your kids get boosted. Canada made it through the first waves of COVID-19 better than many other countries in the world, both on the health side but also on the economic side, because Canadians stepped up with some of the highest vaccination rates of anyone in the world. And if we want to have a better winter than many other countries will, we need to do what we know how to do. Go out, get vaccinated for yourselves, for your loved ones, and for the frontline health workers who are struggling, as always, with a rise in cases as winter approaches.
Hi, Prime Minister. Tom Perry, CBC. Sergei Lavrov actually walked out of a G20 meeting in July when Russia was criticized for its invasion of Ukraine. I'm wondering if you or other countries are planning any kind of gesture, symbolic or otherwise, when Mr. Lavrov speaks at the G20.
We're continuing to look at the best way for us to highlight our disagreements with the kinds of misinformation and disinformation that Russia has consistently put forward. Our focus is going to be very much on ensuring that all countries in the G20 understand the responsibility that Russia holds for the challenges facing citizens in all of our countries and indeed in countries around the world. I have a strong suspicion that the Russian representative will not like what he is going to be hearing from a large number of us at the G20, highlighting the lies that Russia continues to try and peddle in the world as it eschews its direct responsibilities for global instability, for economic hardships, and for increasing food insecurity all around the world.
Is there any reason, though, for you to sit there and listen to Sergei Lavrov if he's going to be giving the same Russian line as before?
I will be focused on listening to leaders. I'm not even sure that Lavrov is going to be speaking. Okay. Moi, j'ai toujours l'intention d'écouter les différents chefs d'État qui seront là. Je ne suis même pas sûr que je vais avoir l'occasion d'entendre M. Lavrov.
We'll take one last question.
Hi, Prime Minister. Dylan Robertson with the Canadian Press. Going into the G20, do you have any fear of undermining the chance of consensus on various issues by pushing to isolate Russia when other G20 countries clearly don't share your views?
The G20 was pulled together by former Canadian Prime Minister Paul Martin as a way for the largest economies in the world to come together despite all their differences in approaches and styles of government and values, but to allow a place for these countries to come together to talk about the big common issues we're facing around the global economy. Could be around global recessions, could be around challenges around climate change or other global issues that are impacting our economy. In this case, the largest issue we're facing with that the global economy is struggling with is the inflation crisis, the energy crisis, the food crisis that is directly caused by and aggravated by Russia's ill-advised choice to invade a peaceful neighboring country. That is going to be on the agenda. It's the heart of why so many of our citizens are struggling right now. And it would be irresponsible for us as leaders to not come together to recognize that and to be very clear that sovereignty, territorial integrity are things that all countries need to be standing up for and defending. And even those countries that have not pronounced themselves as clearly as I think they should on Russia's responsibility for this impact on the world will always stand up to defend territorial integrity and sovereignty, two principles that Russia flagrantly violated with its choice to invade Ukraine.
And a question for you, Prime Minister, and hopefully both your ministries as well. Coming out of the Chinese Communist Party Congress, what is it that worries each of you the most about Xi?
I think we're all seeing that China is taking a more active role in the world, in the global economy. We need to figure out how to engage with it in a way that is consistent not just with our values, but our interests as Canadians. There are some situations that we're going to be challenging them directly on human rights, on use of coercive diplomacy, on lack of respect for the rule of law. There are other situations, whether it's on climate change or certain parts of global trade, where we're going to have to figure out how to work with them. But we're going to do it with clear eyes and strong positions around our values to make sure that everything we do is about standing up for Canadians, standing up for opportunities for Canadians, because that's what people expect, and that's what we'll continue to do. But happy to turn it to Mélanie. Okay, vous répétez en français. Les Canadiens s'attendent à ce qu'on continue de défendre nos valeurs et nos intérêts quand on s'engage avec la Chine et quand on est en train d'être actif à l'échelle mondiale et qu'on voit la place que la Chine continue de prendre dans nos économies et dans les affaires mondiales. Il y a des enjeux sur lesquels on va mettre au défi directement le gouvernement chinois, que ce soit sur les droits humains, que ce soit dans la règle de droit, que ce soit au niveau de la diplomatie coercitive qu'ils ont utilisée. Nous allons être très clairs d'être là pour défendre les Canadiens et nos intérêts. Mais il y a aussi des occasions où on va pouvoir travailler avec eux pour lutter contre les changements climatiques, par exemple, avec la COP 15 qu'on est en train de co-présider à Montréal dans quelques semaines, ou dans des engagements au niveau du commerce international, où il y a des opportunités pour nos entreprises, nos travailleurs. Mais nous allons le faire de façon responsable, qui est toujours là pour défendre les intérêts et les valeurs des Canadiens. Mélanie?
Merci, Monsieur le Premier ministre. Dylan, when you look at the speech I gave nearly a week ago, one thing that was highlighted is how much China is trying to influence international norms in its favor, which really departs from our own interests and values. And so that's my main concern as foreign minister, because it creates more instability in the world, and it's a threat to peace and security in general. So that's why also we're here. We're here because we know that for ASEAN, it's extremely important to have international norms and rules respected, because they have kept us safe since the Second World War. And that's why Canada is also investing so much in this relationship. Ma plus grande préoccupation présentement lorsque vient la question de la Chine, c'est vraiment le fait que de plus en plus, la Chine essaie de transformer les règles internationales en sa faveur. Et ce faisant, ça a un impact parce que c'est à l'encontre des intérêts et des valeurs du Canada et des Canadiens. Et lorsque la Chine essaie de faire ça, ça crée beaucoup d'instabilité dans le monde. Et c'est une menace directe à la paix et à la sécurité dans le fond du monde entier. Et c'est pour ça qu'on est ici. C'est pour ça que c'est si important que le Canada soit ici à ASEAN. Parce que ASEAN veut s'assurer de faire respecter ces normes internationales-là. Ils sont des alliés du Canada et nous sommes des alliés d'ASEAN. Et donc, vous avez entendu le premier ministre parce que notre engagement fait partie de notre vision de maintenir les règles qui font en sorte qu'on a une paix et une stabilité depuis la Deuxième Guerre mondiale.
Thank you very much, Prime Minister. We've been really clear, particularly with Canadian businesses. I've certainly been clear as their trade minister and their business minister that we will support them wherever they operate in the world, including in China. But as Minister Joly has said, we also want to make sure that businesses understand the kinds of risks that may be there for them, and to pursue their economic interests, understanding the kind of risk that they may be taking on. So we will continue to support Canadian businesses, particularly in trade, and that work will continue.
Thank you, everyone. This is what ends press conference. C'est ce qui me fait la conférence de presse du Canada.